Let me share a small brief about the topic today. Over many decades, the definition of health in population studies has expanded beyond the notion of absence of disease or infirmity to now include a more comprehensive and positive view combining physical, mental, and social well-being. Women's well-being is perceived and defined in different cultures and at different life stages and the role that women play in enhancing their own well-being. The future is about working together, aiming to build and maintain good health and well-being, and ensuring women have the best opportunities to participate in the community and with their families. It is about high quality care and access, stability and sustainability in services, and addressing the needs of particularly vulnerable women by making sure they experience real, substantive health outcomes. To deep dive into these very issues, we have put together a very great panel. Let me have the privilege to introduce the speakers. We have Dr. Ruhi Agarwal, founder, Functional Medicine Clinic, Ms. Shilpi Sen, founder, Prayatsa, Dr. Asha Benakappa, HOE Pediatrics at Dr. Chandrama Dayanand Sagar Institute of Medical Education Research, Dr. Pooja CSIR CSIO, Chandigarh, Government of India, and Dr. Radha, Professor, University of Miyazaki, Japan. Before I hand over to Dr. Ruhi Agarwal to moderate the session, a brief introduction of Dr. Ruhi. Dr. Ruhi is founder, Functional Medicine Clinic, and founder of Dr. Juice. Functional Medicine Clinic is an online teleconsultation clinic where they help people reverse chronic conditions. They not only assess the root cause of disease, but also address them holistically. She is the co-founder of Dr. Juice, which was started 2 years ago. Dr. Juice serves fresh, raw, cold-pressed juices, vegan shakes, probiotic, and salads across 8 outlets in Bangalore. Both these ventures were baby steps to help people make sustainable lifestyle changes to heal their body, be healthy and vibrant. Dr. Ruhi's vision is to create a healthier nation. Dr. Ruhi is now actively involved in creating awareness about early detection of breast cancer, having witnessed in an increasing number of young women being detected with breast lumps. She realized that there was a need to educate people about the importance of good nutrition to address and prevent such conditions. May I now hand over the session to Dr. Ruhi to initiate the in-depth session, please. Dr. Ruhi.
Thank you, Mr. Shekhar, for the kind introduction. Okay, just I'm hearing an echo. Okay, it's okay now. So it's an amazing initiative by Tech Bharat to bring together different perspectives and insights on various focus areas. And today we will be talking about women's health and well-being. So we all know how critical it is, how critical women's health and well-being is for the nation. In India, if we see, we have achieved tremendous substantial improvement in terms of health conditions and diseases which were impacting women's health 25 years ago. The maternal mortality rate has come down significantly. Of course, a lot of work still has to be done there. But if we see what is the trend of diseases, the trend of health conditions that's affecting women today has changed over the past couple of years. It's moved from infectious diseases, maternal mortality, to more of non-communicable diseases today. So what has changed? Our lifestyle has changed. The food that we eat today has changed. Our exposure to the environment around us has changed. So the genes have pretty much been, stable. The epigenetics has changed. So, what is that we can do today? Now, the focus of which has been more on sexual reproductive health. Should this continue, or more perspectives, more efforts have to be brought in including other aspects of a woman's health, and not just being focused on sexual health and reproductive health. So as a result of all that has changed around us, we see early puberty in young girls. We see hormonal disorders being rampant. 1 in 10 women is being diagnosed with PCOS. 1 in 5 women has hypothyroid disorder. We see breast cancer being detected early today in, in women in their 30s. And out of um, every two women who's diagnosed of breast cancer, 1 woman loses her life, right? So such high is the disease of the chronic burden. So what I feel that's really missing today is, we are doing a lot of effort in detecting diseases early, detecting cancers early, but then what's missing is an empowerment to the women to really help them understand why are they getting these problems in the first place, why are they facing hormonal issues, and give them tools to understand how they can change it, how they can make their lives better. So as we start with this, I welcome all our panel speakers today. We have researchers, we have scientists, we have entrepreneurs here today to give their various perspectives and insights. So I'll start with Dr. Asha Benkappa, who is the HOD of Pediatrics in Dr. Chandramma Dayananda Sagar Institute. She's been an ambassador of women health. Her focus areas has been prenatal care in women, and she's done amazing work in that area. So Dr. Asha, we would love to hear from you your insights on women health.
Thank you very much, Ruhi. After going through all your CVs, I feel I'm the odd person out. But however, I would like to share whatever I have felt. At the outset, Shekhar made an incomplete definition of health. He said mental, physical, and social. I've been adding environmental health and spiritual health as a part of health. We somehow seems to have missed out on that. And today, if you look at the COVID pandemic, 130 billion disposable masks are contributed to the environment on a daily basis. I'm just talking about the mask. I do not have any data on the PPE and other sanitizer bottles, etc. It's really of great concern. So I would just like, to put my thoughts across, I'll be sharing a few PowerPoints. I've always believed in saying that, okay, while I was telling the definition of health should be environmental and also spiritual health, because the COVID pandemic has taught us a lot about the concerns for the environment. My PhD was child rearing by working women. All along, I have been thinking that the medical profession has exploited the ill health of women, commercialized it, and used it to their advantage. So I had started post-retirement an initiative under my father's name called as Building Wellness Initiative. Our focus now should be more on building health of a woman rather than saying, we are very much focused on illness and treating that illness rather than prevention and curative, more of curative care than preventive care. I know that all of you must be aware of the journey of the first 1,000 days Foundation for a Brighter Future launched by the Government of India. But what is happening is, we have very sound programs, but when it comes to implementation, it is awfully neglected and really not happening at all. And absolutely no monitoring when it comes to all these programs. Very nice, rosy, very good programs, but in reality, nothing has reached the grassroots worker. When we talk about the workforce in the health and family welfare or from the National Health Mission, and that rural woman or that city woman. Research has told us that early years, beginning from pre-conception period till 2 years of age, play key role in childhood brain development. By the age of 2 years, 80% of a person's brain is developed. Development of a child begins as early as the start of a woman's pregnancy. during which she's supposed to avoid stress, she's supposed to have good nutrition, fetal interaction, good, proper labor, regular antenatal visits, care around birth, privacy, dignity, birth companion. I did a study on female birth attendant, role of female birth attendant. Every time when a woman comes for her antenatal checkup, there's a female attendant with her. Why can't we use her as a person to disseminate health, knowledge on women's health, etc. That particular study got published in one of the journals, and people said, oh, this is very interesting. Whenever you talk about anything, any skill, any message has to be given, the hospitals or the health institutes throw up their hands and says, we don't have sufficient human resource. So these people can be used for that. Early initiation of breastfeeding, skin to skin contact, early stimulation is essential to have a healthy child with optimal physical, mental, and social development. Investing on women will go a long way. At least let's create a future generation of healthy children so that we don't waste all our investment on that. Why the 1,000 days? The first 1,000 days are a period of rapid physical growth and accelerated mental development. And it's a unique opportunity to build lifelong health and intelligence. This is a time when they are going to seek a health institute, and we have opportunities for interventions, because rest of the time they may not find time to come to the hospital. Refers to the periods that begin with pregnancy planning and goes up when the child reaches a second birthday. Baby in the womb is dependent on the mother for nutrition as well as mental, physical, and emotional growth. What you do as parents in the first 1,000 days makes difference to the rest of your baby's life. Planning your pregnancy is very, very crucial. You get married, you get pregnant, you bring up a baby. They're not at all ready to take care of this child. So in all women health programs, at one end, we can say plan your pregnancy. At another hand, prevent your pregnancy till you're ready for it. So these are, do not make a decision under peer or parental pressure. Avoid pregnancy before you're 18 years old, because the uterus is still not well developed. You'll be surprised to know November 17th is celebrated as a World Premature Day all over the globe. And 1 million premature babies are born every year. And, and the investment, their survival, intact survival, we say, is extraordinarily expensive. This is where I'm trying to tell that we must build wellness and not bank on illness. Maintain the recommended gap of 2 years. You may have to arrange resources for the arrival of the little one. People are not at all prepared for the little one, and then the child comes in, and so many issues. For those of you who have not read this book, The Men Who Rape, and in that it is an abusive parenting, and so many issues like that. So we need to teach women about all this, because many women are hesitant to ask about pregnancy prevention, etc. And I just saw in Ruhi's shelf, there's a very nice book on nutrition. So I've been into waging a war on breastfeeding and nutrition. So we just say eat healthy foods. Sit down and spend time with the mother and ask her what she's eating. And you'll be surprised to know that whatever she's consuming is not enough for her. We have extremes. I'm not addressing the issue of the obese women. I'm addressing the issue of the large number of women who are undernourished. Then, this all this stay active, take 400 micrograms of folic acid daily, avoid harmful chemicals and toxins. Rui just mentioned the kind of food that we use, or from organic to inorganic, and our lifestyle diseases are increasing. Especially the COVID pandemic has made situation really bad. Children stopped going to Anganwadis. The nutrition status has gone really bad. And the women were getting here there is something called as prasuti ahara. Women who in the postnatal period were getting 6 weeks of good nutrition in the Anganwadi centers in the state of Karnataka. All that stopped. We seem to have had a terrible setback of 10 years. So all these important things, like with the COVID pandemic, and before they were not doing it, at least now we'll use this opportunity to talk to them about cleanliness and prevention of illness. Then the kind of vessels they use at home are also toxic. Then protect yourself from infections like washing your hands, frequently with soap water. We know about the SMS, sanitizer, mask, and hand hygiene and social distancing has to be going on, and we have to emphasize. So avoiding tobacco, alcohol, and narcotic drugs, which have a very deleterious effects on the children. There was a study in Bangalore by NIMHANS where the adolescent girls of Bangalore city are into tobacco, alcohol, and narcotic drugs. And that has a lot of implications on the newborn. Oral health, we know that if mothers have gingivitis, they're going to give birth to a premature baby. Then we have to focus a lot now on emotional health, because we have to manage and reduce stress. We should say no to domestic violence. Women's helpline. I request all the panelists to call up the women's helpline number. It will never be picked up. Okay, why do we have all these programs when they're not being worked at all? Being relaxed can double your chance of becoming pregnant. Then before, during, after pregnancy, we have a lot of things. And I saw in the panel the topics that has to be covered. We're all the time talking about the adolescent girl. You know, we should do like this. I mean, we should be given adolescent vaccination, iron and folic acids. We have to prepare her for pregnancy, contraceptions, etc. So much focus on the adolescent girl. What about that poor adolescent boy? Let's not leave them behind. They are also suffering a lot. These are the variant nutrients required theoretically, but it is not happening in the field. So just for the sake of completion, and I have done 3 decades, more than 3 decades in breastfeeding. You know, the simple message that if you don't breastfeed, you know, the exclusive breastfeeding rate is only 55%. This is 2019 statistics. We're ready to get the 2020 statistics where things have gone down very badly. Breastfeeding within 1 hour of birth is 41%, and continued breastfeeding is 45%, where all this should be 100%. And just by doing breastfeeding, diarrhea, pneumonia, and obesity is prevented. What about the health impact on mothers? Mothers must be made aware, because one of our panelists is going to talk about breast cancer. By not breastfeeding, they're going to get breast cancer, ovarian cancer, type 2 diabetes. And healthcare costs due to illnesses is in crores. Formula feeding is on the rise. That means to say, whatever we are doing on breastfeeding has not impacted that woman. I like this fantastic trends initiative. You know, for those of you, you can go and look up this in the website. International IPFAN, International Breastfeeding Network of network. They have done this World Breastfeeding Trends Initiative, which monitors policies and programs at country level. National policy program and coordination is neglected. You know, for a score of 10, India has got 1.5. And Baby Friendly Hospital, we often see women struggling to get information and skill support. Infant feeding during emergencies, these are marks on the trends. And we know that breastfeeding helps in cognitive development, but again, it's very bad. And also the relative mortality risk in absence of breastfeeding has happened. Mortality risk is there. Okay. For neonatal deaths, say with early initiation, now it is Ghana study has shown that 25% of neonatal deaths can be prevented by early initiation, but women are not at all aware what is this early initiation, and the baby should be put to the breast. So these are some of my thoughts on women's health. To conclude, I would like to say the birth of a child is celebrated, announced, even photographed, and rightly so. But the birth of a mother happens in quiet, often in the early hours of the morning, to worried thoughts and questions. I believe it's time we celebrate and honor that birth too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asha, for the wonderful insight and highlighting on the fact to include other dimensions of health, such as environmental and spiritual, which is often ignored in our national programs. Also, you highlighted on the fact of a woman being undernourished. If we see today, the focus has been on, on rural women being undernourished. But today what we see is the urban women, right? Because of, the unhealthy food that they take, I mean, they are actually, undernourished, which is resulting in, children being dumped with all the toxins that they have. We see cases of a lot of cases of autism and neurocognitive disabilities in children today. And children are being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, autoimmune conditions at very early stages. And all this, a lot of a main cause of all this is the health of a woman. So as we continue this discussion, I would welcome Dr. Pooja Devi. She is a senior scientist in CSIO Chandigarh, and her focus areas has been clean energy solutions, clean water, and she's an ambassador for women empowerment, and has been recipient of various awards. So Dr. Pooja Devi, welcome, and we would love to hear from you, your insight on women health.
Thank you, Dr. Ruhi. Thank you for the invitation and inviting me on a discussion of such a very important issue pertinent to current scenario. As you rightly said, like earlier, when we talk about human health, it was more related to the physical health, okay, the disease associated with it. But with the current scenario, with the kind of development being happening, women participating at a large forefront coming into various sectors. So it's not just a physical health, it's a mental, social, management, managing personal, professional life kind of environment they are working on. So there are several things which are now impacting human health. And there is also an emotional factor associated with it. How, since women by mother nature, they are gifted with more responsibility in comparison to other gender. So fulfilling those responsibility as well as moving forward in the front role and balancing that, it has a big impact on their mental health, especially, I would say. The previous speaker, Dr. Asha, she gave a very nice talk about, and it was really very informative to know, specifically in the, in a view of how, even for a working woman, if planning for such kind, like family planning thing, how to, the important factor that affect her health, that should be taken care, that should not be set back, giving priority to the work. So at the end, when we are talking about giving birth to a child, it is also giving birth to a mother. A mother is born when a child is born, and a lot of changes happen physically, mentally. I would say more mental changes also happen, taking care of herself and also taking care of a newbie in the family. And specifically talking about what I work upon, since I can also say I'm also odd one out, but I would share my experience in terms of how do I relate my research for the women health being, as well as what is importantly required for the mental point of view, environmental point of view, or socially point of view for the well-being of women. So I specifically work in the area of clean energy. My research group work in area of clean energy with major focus towards hydrogen energy. As you know, like our government, it has high priority in the area of energy sector, so as to make energy available to every citizen in the country. And we know that under Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, their focus is on energy efficiency through Ujjwala program. And focus is to move towards these conventional sources to the renewable energy sources, to have at least 175 gigawatt of installed capacity of energy by 2022. If we see specifically in the women aspect, if I say, women are the major user of various energy things. Like if I, one of the thing is cooking. So we are exposed to, the primary role of cooking goes to women only. And they are, especially if I talk about the rural area, they rely upon this biomass burning, wood burning. So they are directly exposed to high level of toxins, high level of pollutant into that environment. And according to a study, around 700 million people in India, they use firewood based simple chulas in their houses, in their daily cooking. And this burning of biomass, it creates, air pollution as around the household and outdoor areas. And more than 25% of outdoor air pollution is contributed by this burning of this biomass. Okay, and exposure to this mass is cause premature death in several cases, in case of in pregnancy as well, and mainly in the rural areas for the cooking purpose. And exposure to smoke, it also cause several health issues related with the it may lead to some respiratory problems. So what we are focusing on to come up with some clean energy solution, where as a material scientist, we are working towards non-conventional energy sources, like utilizing solar powered based cooking system, or coming up as recently our Ministry of Science and Technology declared the hydrogen energy mission. So this hydrogen energy, it has been expected to cover every energy sector, whether it is an industrial sector, automobile sector, even the cooking sector. It is going to have a huge impact, because this hydrogen burning, it does not release toxic pollutant which are there from the burning of biomass and this wood burning. So these we are I'm majorly focusing on developing technologies, techniques, how we can safely utilize hydrogen based cooking solution which can cater to especially rural sector. So the health issues associated with the burning of the biomass could be reduced to a large extent. So that is one of the primary area. Second area, I am working towards these water pollutant monitoring, as well as air purification devices, where we are working towards in-house air purification devices that can clean the toxins. The focus here has been towards for the working places where women are working, and a lot of in workplace, there are a lot of toxins are there, because most of the workplace are they are enclosed space, okay, and a lot of toxins, they comes into your workplace. So how can we clean that air, and we can get a fresh air which can take care of air related health issues. So we are focusing on developing those kind of products which can cater not only to even women, but to everyone for the enclosed office spaces. And in current COVID pandemic situation, this become a very much of high importance, because we according to a study recently, it came that COVID-19 spreads through aerosols more than surfaces. So these aerosols, and since we are now everyone is going to offices, we are all are working, how to ensure the quality of the air which we are breathing, and free from COVID and free from other kind of air pollutants. So in this direction, we are working towards different products, different materials development and translation of those materials for the product part. So that is all about I'm working in terms of research point of view. And since a very good issue in current scenario, mental health is one important thing which should be looked into from women well-being. Like being a professional, like coming to a forefront as a working woman, managing the professional and personal life. So there's a big mental pressure into the women head that which they keep. If I give an example for a new mother leaving their child at home at like 4 months or 6 months and going to the office and performing well like other genders, as well as having the pressure in mind about the kid at home. So there are several mental things which are associated with the female, which is not there with other genders. So we need to look into those issues also, and we need to see how we can provide comfortable environment, better environment for them to perform better. So with this, I would like to end my initial comments on it. Thank you, Rohi.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. That was really informative, and it's wonderful to know about the work that you are doing in the space of environment. In my practice of functional medicine, what I see a lot in most of our women patients is presence of toxins when we do, when we do a thorough a comprehensive blood work, we see, the presence of a whole lot of toxins. Where are they coming from? It's coming from the water, it's coming from the air, it's coming from the pesticides that contaminates the food that we eat. So it's really important that we really take into consideration the environment around us. I would also like to highlight on the presence of toxins in a lot of cosmetic products that's being used, right? I mean, of course, a whole lot of cosmetic companies, the whole industry is booming, right? There has to be good regulations in place when it comes to what ingredients are being used, what kinds of preservatives are being used. So with those thoughts, I'll move to Dr. Radha Madhyastha. She is the assistant professor at University of Miyazaki, and her focus area has been molecular targets of functional food and its therapeutic efficiency. So she is doing a lot of work in the space of inflammation, tissue regeneration. So Dr. Radha, I invite you to give your thoughts on women health, your perspective.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Ruhi. Thank you for the introduction. So it's my honor and pleasure to be here, participating here, talking about women's health in India's perspective. And so, as Dr. Asha said, health is not only physical and mental, it's also environmental and spiritual health. Going back to Hippocrates, the father of medicine, he said, the natural healing force within us is the greatest force in getting well. So that means our own bodies are naturally capable of healing ourselves. And he also emphasized that, let food be thy medicine. So that means our food has the properties, has the energy to help us recover from our disease, and it also helps us prevent getting ill. So in this scenario, I think India has a huge support with through Ayurveda. Ayurveda is one big gold pot of functional foods. Of nowadays, now we hear a lot about functional food. So what is this functional food? Every food has its own function. So what is the definition of functional food? Functional food can be defined as, let me read it. Any food or food ingredient that provides us with health benefits beyond its traditional basic nutrients it contains. So for the example would be our haldi, turmeric. It's also called as the kitchen gold or the golden spice. It is laden with, it's a very common ingredient of Ayurvedic medicine, and it's also laden with several components like curcumin, beta-carotene, vitamins C, zinc, etc. And all of these have medicinal properties. And they also, and our own research work has shown that it helps in dissolving blood clots. And it also helps in the movement of cells. So it helps in wound healing. And in combination with gold nanoparticles, it helps in combating it. There's more combating cancer cells. It causes apoptosis. It kills the cancer cells. And not only turmeric, there are several other functional foods. For example, like all the whole grains are also functional foods. And we have the nuts, pulses. So many like unprocessed foods. Even the dairy milk, the full fat milk, not the processed fat, processed milk. Even those can be considered as functional foods. And we have the yogurt, the probiotic enriched yogurt, the curds. All these are functional foods. So this, all these we have been using from ancient days, like from olden days. But unfortunately now, because of our current scenario is like we are going into fast food. So and then we stop using these traditional foods, functional food, the concept is lost. So here, I think we need to get back to our traditional method of food habits. We should have the people, the younger generation especially, do not have informed information about the benefits of the full like whole grains, the uses of whole grains or the functional foods as such. So I think it's our duty to propagate or create more awareness for the younger generation, because they are the future generation. This younger generation is the backbone of the future of a future country, future India. And then we also have the physical fitness, physical activities. This digital era, everything comes at the fingertips. So we don't we are having a problem with our physical activities. It's restricted, especially now because of the COVID. For this past 1 year, I think the physical activities has been drastically reduced, and that again is not it's not good for our health. So again, going back to Hippocrates, he said walking is man's best medicine. But how many of us walk? We don't do regularly. We don't walk regularly. So these simple things, like simple actions, like making conscious food selection, or actively involving in physical activities like walking or jogging, or yoga in the Western world is considered as a physical activity for physical health. But as Dr. David Frawley says, yoga is more than a physical tool. It is a spiritual tool. It connects you to the spiritual part of you. So that will be connected. That can be connected to the spiritual health, like improve your spiritual health. When you improve your spiritual health, naturally you'll become more conscious about your daily actions, your daily choices. So that will come about the spiritual health. And then we come to the environmental health, as Dr. Asha and Dr. Pooja rightly said, and of course, Dr. Rui also mentioned that our environment is the major source of pollutant. So we need to deal with the environmental aspects also. Like I'm here, just recently we got our university, we got a project, a huge grant from the Japan Science and Technology to have a collaborative research with Nitte University, Karnataka, India, to study the effect of groundwater contamination on prenatal and child development. Because arsenic, groundwater pollution like arsenic or endosulfan or any heavy metals, they have long-term effects. They may not immediately show up, but then they have a long-term effect on the child growth, and ultimately the arsenic especially leads to carcinogenesis. It can cause cancer. So we just got a one-core project with to work in the areas of Kerala and Karnataka to study survey the impact of on pregnant ladies, and up to 2 years, follow the studies for 5 years. So we'll be following it up to see the development of the children. Like, so hair samples and nail samples will be collected, and we'll study the biological effects, like to try to prevent, to see whether there is any carcinogenic like stimulants, whether the body is how it's reacting. So that's in that way, I think we need to do some more, like a more focus on environmental pollution. And as coming back to the food, daily dietary food, it's not like diet restriction. We should not be for current scenario is focusing on diet restriction, but I think it should not be a diet restriction. It is informed decision. For example, this is, can you see this, or is it opposite? It's like this is a Japanese food guide, spinning top. So this is I mean, you can get this picture on the net also. So it shows the amount of food serving. For example, we have let me read, 5 to 7 servings of grain dishes, 5 to 6 servings of vegetable dishes, 3 to 5 servings of proteins. Of course, here in Japan, it is fish and meat and soya beans, but in India, we can change it, we can use it, complement it with pulses. And then 2 servings of milk, 2 servings of fruits, and snacks, confection, beverages taken moderately. And in Japan, we have we drink more of green tea than water. So that again is like an antioxidant and anti-aging. It has a lot of, it is a functional food by itself. So this sort of conscious selection of food, I think, is the base for the Japanese long life. Japanese are known to have the longest life span, like 80, 89 or 90 years. It can go to even 90 years. So that on average, it's about 85 years. So I think we need to instill these daily life activities rather than for the government is actually is doing a wonderful job with so many programs like Anemia Mukt Bharat. Of course, most of us are most of the Indian women and the children are anemic. So we have the Anemia Mukt Bharat, and we also have the Poshak, adolescent health programs and so many programs. But everything, I think the main thing depends upon the daily selection. And then we also have for the mental activity, mental health, the most important part would be the family support and cooperation is most needed, especially now when there's a shift from the joint family system to the nuclear family. Even in India, we have now the nuclear family system is gradually progressing. So, and it's like I for you, you for me. The grandparents or the joint family system is declining. So it is like we for each other. That's all we have to do. If the spouse is not supportive, then there is a more mental torture for the woman, especially when she is a working woman. And now in this COVID scenario, it's very common to hear about the working mothers with small children telling, I'm just waiting for the school to start. It's not only the children who are missing the school, the children are also missing the school. But the mothers, the parents are the ones who are missing the school a lot because they have to work at home, work from home. But then when they are at home, the children will not allow them to work. And they have to, it's like 24 hours. They have to do like Shakti. They need too many hands and legs. 2 legs are not enough. So Ms. Lambo Kuka of UN Women, the executive director of UN Women, she's rightly said, family can be a make or break for women and children. If a family is supportive, the woman can progress, even her social dreams, her activities can progress. But if the family is not supportive, she will be she's caught in a pot. She cannot escape. There's no way out. And so home should be where the heart is, not where the hurt is. So these are the things we need to take. Physical health with daily food selection and physical activity, and then mental support from the family. So that means the counseling is not only for the pair, for the women, the husband, the spouses, the family members also need to be given awareness programs to tell them that don't take your wife for granted. She's not, I'm sorry to be harsh, but it's like unpaid home helper, right? She also has an individual soul. Don't make use of her. Give respect. Respect each. It should be to and fro. And then we also have to deal with the environmental aspects. So with this, I think I can let the next person continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Radha. I love your thoughts on functional food and how you have really, highlighted on bringing back the traditional food, right? When if we see what's happening in India today, we have the whole nutrition industry booming, right? But then there's a lot of focus on superfood, but these superfoods are coming from the West, right? In India, we do not have a dearth of ancient grains, right, which have been always been a part of our culture, but then we are forgetting it and replacing it with something coming from the West. Millets, for example, right? I mean, millets have the whole range of millets, and with different health benefits, and they need to be brought back into our daily routine. And as you rightly said, it has to be a conscious choice of food, what one takes. And again, what you mentioned as domestic violence, or what you rightly said towards the end, kind of a wife is not an unpaid home help, right? A lot of these we would hear earlier in the past with respect to the rural women, but then it's becoming more and more prevalent in urban India today. So we need to focus on strategies, on policy building in that area. And a lot of now functional food has a role to play when it comes to cancer. So we see breast cancer being the most common cancer in women. And in India, every one woman out of every two women who's diagnosed of breast cancer, one woman loses her life. So why do we have this? It's because of, yes, it's because of women are diagnosed late, right? And again, we do not have a focus or empowerment on how one can have a healthy life and actually prevent conditions like cancer. So I would invite Shilpi Sen, who is the founder of Prayastha, where she's doing an amazing work in developing personalized breast implants for breast cancer survivor. I myself have been closely associated with a lot of breast cancer screening projects to help women detect cancer early. We help them detect early. Uh, they undergo surgery, and many of them have to undergo mastectomy, right? But then is after that the quality of life good for women? Do they have the confidence to lead a good life? So let's hear from Shilpi what your thoughts are, and when it comes to women health with breast cancer.
Thank you, Ruhi. And I feel really honored to be among all of you. I am neither a doctor nor a person graduated in science at all. So I feel very, very lucky today to be a part of this panel and speaking about our work. It's as Ruhi rightly mentioned, that breast cancer is an unfortunate condition in women, and of course, India is no exception to it. So I am, just to correct Ruhi, I'm not the founder. I'm a co-founder of my company. I have, I do have another co-founder who's fortunately or unfortunately is a male working for the women. His name is Vikas Garg. And here I would like to really say one thing, that the name Prayastha was given by my late mother. And it means somebody who's striving for excellence. And as a company, our motto is to make a difference in the life of people, especially women, with technology, with material, and with 3D printing. So just to give a little background, I had lost my maternal aunt to breast cancer, and I had seen how my family suffered emotionally, especially my maternal grandparents at that point of time. And I was pretty young, so I did not understand much about the disease at that time, but I always wanted to do something about this particular disease. And then I offline started studying about the breast cancer disease and the lives of mastectomy survivors, along with the job that I was doing out of my curiosity. And what I realized that prevention and diagnosis are the first steps to understand what breast cancer is all about. But what happens to the women who are victim to this deadly disease and have either lost one or both the breast to breast cancer? Are these women emotionally hurt when they lose their breast cancer, to cancer? One must understand that mastectomy creates a lot of psychological issues. And when we are talking about issues such as mental environment, as well as psychological issues among women, either they are single or married, or however the society takes them. But what we forget always is that one survives a breast cancer, but what happens to the quality of life after that? Unfortunately, I would like to say that not many people do not understand the emotional turmoil that these women suffer. And it's not a particular geographical trend. It's a trend everywhere in the world that men especially do not understand why does somebody requires a proper restoration solution after she has survived a breast cancer. And what we realized, since, as I mentioned, that I'm not somebody who's technical or from a scientific background, my co-founder, Vikas, he's a material scientist. And what we realized is that I would like to bring here rather a very fortunate incident that I would like to mention here. I met Vikas at Ruhi's house. Ruhi and I have been studying or was studying in the Netherlands at one point of time, and I met her there. So I met Vikas in India at Ruhi's house, and both of us, we were just talking over what one needs to do apart from the job that we are doing. So he came out with a solution where personalization can be done. And we zeroed down on something where the personalization is missing as of now. It's the breast cancer survivors restoration solutions. And so we together thought that his expertise in 3D printing and knowledge of material can be amalgamated with my skills of communication and storytelling. And we started working together. And we started this particular startup through a grant from Department of Science and Technology under Nidhi Prayas scheme. And we are making a medical grade silicon 3D printer to manufacture personalized breast implants and prostheses for mastectomy survivors. Also, I would like to tell you here that I am obviously, I know that you people are aware of the numbers of, all the statistics of breast cancer patients or survivors that are there in India. But just to highlight here that it is the most common cancer in India, especially among the younger population. And the average age of Indian women who are likely to get breast cancer is 10 years younger than the world's average. And we are the third largest population of breast cancer incidences after China and USA. Also to bring here to a notice that there are about 500,000 women who are breast cancer survivors in India. I have been interacting with a lot of breast cancer survivors in Pune, where we are based right now. And we realized that no two women bodies are same. So why giving them a solution which is standard? So whatever solution that are available in the market are absolutely standard. There is no personalization that is done. Even if there are personalization that are done, it comes at a very, very high cost, and none of them are available in India. Though I did mention that there are 500,000 breast cancer survivors in India, still we import a lot of reconstruction solutions from abroad. There's nothing made in India. And therefore, we decided that the first focus area that we wanted to work was to give women who are breast cancer survivors with a personalized solution, which is implants and prostheses. Of course, and I'm very proud to say that we are on the final step of assembling our machine. I think we should be ready to print from Monday the coming Monday, and I'll be more than happy to share some of our work with you once we have a product which is not ready for the market, but at least ready for printing. And also, I would like to take this opportunity to say that the technology that we are developing does not or is not available commercially anywhere in the world. So I'm very proud to say that in case if we really, achieve the technology what we are trying to do, we'll be the first in the world to come out with a silicon 3D printing and to give a restoration solution which is personalized to mastectomy survivors. That's all from my side, and I give the platform to all of you. Ruhi, you can take it over.
Thank you, Shilpi. Thank you. I've seen your entrepreneurial journey and how you took up, this cause to be the mission of your life. And my best wishes to you and Vikas. And we are really looking forward, to your dreams take shape. And we heard from all of you how each one of you are doing amazing work in your focus area. So in my opinion, when it comes to women's health, it has to be a life course agenda. It should not be just focused on sexual and reproductive health. We need to include the other aspect of a women's health journey, right? The whole focus of the government, of the policies that we are making, has to encompass the entire journey of a woman, right from being a young girl to adolescence, fertility, mother, and the later stages of life. So with that, Dr. Pooja, I know you're working a lot in women empowerment, also with young girls, right? So what do you think? What could we do there, for a better health of young girls?
Thank you, Ruhi. So, especially regarding to the women empowerment, I specifically work towards encouraging women, maybe girl students from the school level itself, and to retain them in the field of science. And the reason being, I see that most of the girls, even though they are enrolled in school level, they opt for science subject, but when it comes to conversion of that trained manpower at a professional level, the percentage is very low. Okay, so I feel they don't get that much guidance and that much information how they sometimes the girls, the women, they give up because of difficulty. They feel that could be their managing both things, the professional life and the personal life, and also getting them mentally ready for it. And that is also very important. If we make them aware in very early age, we give them role models, we connect them with the mentors who have done excellent in their life. So that is how where I think at school education level it is very much important, whether we want more women into the field of technical, including the STEM field, we want this wellness to be introduced, or everything. I think at a school level these all things should be there, at syllabi level, or even at there should be proper mentorship at that platform itself, so that they can understand the challenges and they can understand what are the ways out that they can overcome.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Pooja. And if we see in terms of, in case of young girls in the school level, a lot of focus is on menstrual health, right? Menstrual health hygiene, and a lot of work has been done. So when it comes to functional food, healthy food, I strongly believe that all this education can be given right from that stage, right? So that as they start their as they are becoming more and more aware of of the environment, of the food choices, we are able to instill it at that age itself, right? As they get into adolescence, puberty. So Dr. Dr. Asha, you work a lot with a lot in the space of, fertility, pregnant women, prenatal, postnatal care. We see a lot of IV, IV clinics, IVF clinics, kind of mushrooming in the cities. And when couples end up draining a whole lot of money, out of pocket expenditure when it comes to really having a child, right? So what are your thoughts on it? How can we improve this condition today?
Number one, we have to focus on adolescent health. Okay, adolescent health and young adults. Now, WHO has extended definition of adolescent health from 18 years, adolescent from 18 years to 21 years, so that we include the young adults. What is happening to these adolescent children? They are victims of the fast food chain, market chain, and they're extremely stressed. There are many young women who are diagnosed as PCOS, and nobody talks about prevention. That's exactly what I was trying to tell you. You create a fear psychosis, you create illness, you commercialize that and bank on it and grow rich. It's really a very hard work. And I like the way Dr. Radha was talking about our functional foods. I'm a pediatrician, more into breastfeeding, complementary feeding. And I want to reach demystification of health to the common man. And she was talking about all our traditional foods. And in India, suddenly there was a Kellogg's market. Like if you want to have a minus waistline or slim or ultra slim, you take this breakfast cereal. Then oats. Small little children were fed with oats as far as our country was concerned. The nutritive value of oats is as good as ragi here, millets here. See how the marketing strategy works. And as far as young children are concerned, we have a law here. It is called as Infant Food and Feeding Bottle Act, which was passed in the Indian Parliament in 1992 and amended in 2003. And you will be shocked the way the baby food industry flourished during the COVID pandemic. For no reason, a breastfeeding mother was separated from a baby, and these young children were fed with this baby food, which contains, additives, flavoring agents, coloring agents, so many things, and it is tinned. It's kept there for 3 years. Imagine the amount of pesticides, preservatives, all this. When you're so young, you start off with such unnatural food. Natural, tomorrow you'll land up with an infertility clinic. So the focus should be on adolescent health and nutrition. At least take one agenda at a time and do something about it. I want to focus on breastfeeding and complementary feeding, because in the first 3 years, the brain is developing. When the baby is in the womb of the mother, 76% of the brain is developed. By the end of 3 years, it is 80%. Please focus on this. What is the use of focusing after the brain is developed? It is said that don't take care of the horses when they have left the stables. And Shilpi was talking about, not Shilpi, Pooja, somebody about the toxins. There's a beautiful organization in Delhi called as the Toxic Links. They're doing wonderful work. Any analysis, we need to collaborate with like-minded people as far as this toxins are concerned. I've been time and again talking about arsenic. And in certain parts of Karnataka, we have endosulfan in Bangalore, which Radha was talking about. Terrible nutrition hazards for all these children. These are my comments. Thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Asha. I am so much with you, with your thoughts on, that we really need to stop banking on illness, and wellness is what it has to be the go forward. That's what made me leave my clinical practice and move to, learning more about clinical nutrition and functional medicine. And now it's the mission of my life to focus on helping people reverse chronic conditions. I was diagnosed with PCOS 10 years ago. Right. Then all I knew was it's the hormonal pills which one should take, to manage the symptoms of PCOS. With my quest for knowledge, with my, yearning to learn more, I was able to figure out what I could do to reverse it. And the same I am trying to, now help women to really address the root cause of PCOS and not live with it. And Dr. Pooja, you very rightly spoke about, just simple things like, exposure to the sun, just walk, do some walking, move yourself. And the whole that we just don't need to focus on physical component of health. The non-physical is so important. If the non-physical component is not healthy, we cannot do anything about the physical component. Sorry, I think I named it wrong. It was Dr. Radha who spoke about these things. So Dr. Radha, you being there in Japan, right? I mean, of course, you mentioned about the, the food pattern there. So what is it that, what more could we learn from, from the Japan healthcare when it comes to really, improving women health and well-being?
Okay, so it's Japan healthcare it's a multidisciplinary. Can you hear me? Yeah. So Japan healthcare is a multidisciplinary action, especially when it comes to elderly people. Elderly people, because like we have four sectors. Like one is help. They have to take, they or the family takes care of themselves. Second one will be volunteer service. So you'll have volunteer people in the society volunteering to help out with the elderly people's activities. The third one would be the insurance, like provisional facilities, like where you have this life insurance or the health insurances, and that will come to help you for your health care. And the fourth one would be the government services. So government here has really subsidized health insurance for young here for the young children up to 15 years. It's absolutely almost free. So the hospital admissions or even the medications, anything is absolutely free till the child is about 15 years old. And then again, when for the elderly people, it's like, I think it's about 80% subsidies there. So especially like you see a lot of elderly people going regularly to the rehabilitation centers for their, to have their ultrasound or electric massages for their knees, like joints, because bone osteoporosis and like it's a major problem for old people. After 50-60 years, everyone is prone to get that. So you see that at least thrice a week, the elderly people will be going for their therapies. That is because of the government subsidy available. And then we also have the daycare centers for the old age, because they cannot, people then like everyone is working, and even if they are with their, it's very rare that they are with their children. It's completely total isolated, but still the daycare centers are there. So in the mornings, the service facility comes, picks you up, takes you to the daycare center. The whole day you are under someone's supervision. Evening, when the family is back, or when you're like, you come back to your home. And then there's also this digital facility, like, for example, old people tend to get up early in the morning, and they have a fixed daily schedule, like morning 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, they get up, and the first thing they'll do is go switch on the water heater to make their green tea. So all those are not the, like it's an electrical appliance, but then it is connected digitally to the service at least to the family members or to the service provider. So if one day, if the machine is not switched on, so it gives a signal like there could be some problem with that person. It's like a SOS call. So their daily activity is sort of like digitally, it's not stalking, but it's following. So it like these easy concepts, and like it's not like what do you call it? It's not difficult. Of course, when if you have the financial source for it, it's done. And then again, because of the digital era, you have the what do you call, the video conferences. So the children, the grandparents, the biggest gift for the grandparents is seeing the smile of the grandchild, right? So video calls, video conferences, regular calls, regular chats because of the conferences, because especially in this 1 year COVID, like we could not come to India, but Japan, inside Japan itself, people could not go from one state to another. So it causes a lot of pressure, stress. But then because of the video conference calls, it's made life so easy for them and they're happy. And you'll be surprised, like at this age, they can, like, I mean, the old, we are underestimating the old people. They are as sharp as I can say, mentally sharp. They're able to pick up things fast. But if they're left alone, solitary, then that will lead to Alzheimer's. It leads to mental depression. And those things are being avoided now. People are, like, the government and the people are trying to see that the prevention, the social interaction is there, interaction through these daycare centers. And then you also see old people playing what we call the putter golf. It's more like a golf, but at a smaller level in the park, like you aim the ball into a small hole. So it's a group activity. The old people, even at 80 years, are still actively playing games. They are actively involved in physical activities. And that helps them keep themselves stronger and healthier. But in our country, once you are about after 60, it's natural that we develop some slight discomfort, but that becomes a reason for us not to get into intensive physical activity. Like a slight joint pain, no, I cannot walk, so I'm not going for my walk today. And then today becomes tomorrow. So it just goes on, and then the joint pain does not relieve, but you will be relieved of you will leave away your physical activity. And another thing is the exposure to sunlight. If you're inside the house, you don't get exposure to sunlight, and you need the vitamin D for your bones to be strong. You need calcium to work, and for the calcium to work, you need vitamins and the vitamin D, and that is available only when you go out in the sunlight. So physical activity of the elder people is a major difference I find between India and Japan. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Radha, for those valuable insights. I did my medical training in China, and there I would see, women in their 60s, 70s out there performing Tai Chi, and all so active, right? I mean, postmenopausal. I mean, it's postmenopausal, say, but still they are so active. They are not facing any issues with their joints or with their bone health, right? It's all about what they're eating, how healthy they are eating, and the positive mindset. Shilpi, I'm sure with your work in the space of breast cancer, you would have interviewed a whole lot of breast cancer survivors or people working in the breast cancer space, right? Whether it be it NGOs or the government or other stakeholders. So in your experience, what do you think is still missing when it really comes to we are doing a lot of work in screening, right? But even what I felt was, I helped someone screen early, but then really getting that person now to the next stage of really availing treatment, right? It's still, there is fear in a woman's mind, right? So it can be stigma, it can be fear of, finance issues, and a whole lot of things. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? What is that we could do better here?
So basically, Ruhi, what I understood is that some odd reason from, I don't know, time immemorial, probably women breast has with some beauty asset that she has. And diagnosed with breast cancer or a kind of a tumor, which may or may not be a cancer, she feels that her very femininity is attacked. And what happens is that initially there is a lot of denial that how can I have something like this? Family is under denial. Of course, I understand that women like me who are not married are more prone to breast cancer hormonally, or however you want to put it. Screening is very important, but some women feel shy in even getting oneself screened properly through an NGO or a proper clinician, or name it, and people are just under the denial factor. Also, it's very surprising to me that when I interacted with one of the women survivors in Pune, I'm not going to name the person, she's quite elderly now. She was diagnosed at an age, I think in her 30s, when she first suffered from breast cancer and her breast was removed. Her husband started dating somebody else, some other women. And the reason that he ended up giving in a fight, which Dr. Radha just mentioned, that not only physical, but women should be taken a bit serious in the society, in the family at least, where the mental health is also a part of her wellness. The reason that was given was that he misses the breasts. I mean, that's the reason that her husband gave. So it came as a very shocking thing for her and as well as me. And at the same time, I think I mentioned to you once, Ruhi, long time back, that a very renowned professor ended up telling me that so what, a woman suffers from breast cancer. In India, we wear a sari or a dupatta and it's not seen. And one should worry about the food scarcity that the world has. So these are kind of a mental blockade that one has. Apart from that, also the biggest challenge that a woman mentally faces is that a lot of expenses goes in her treatment till she's actually cancer free, and the breast is taken out for, if not a lumpectomy, a breast is taken out fully for her. She feels a little bit shy in telling her husband that she also needs a restoration solution. So she either stuffs herself with balls of cotton cloth or socks, or however somebody comes from a financial background. That's what she does, which in the later stage, I'm sure you people are more aware than I would be, that it starts probably becoming a posture problem for her. There's a gait issue, and her shoulder starts stooping down from where the breast is removed for her. So these are some things that I realized that it has nothing to do with education, but it has to do with acceptance. Acceptance by the family, acceptance by the society, and the biggest acceptance is ourselves. We as women have to accept that this is a part and parcel of the life now, and not believing in a family or a person, a group of people, especially your relatives, who come and tell you that, oh, you must have done something wrong in your past deed, so God is punishing you for that. That is one of, I was very surprised to hear from a survivor who's very well educated, was at a certain position in her life when she was working, but one of her very close cousin ended up telling her this. So she doesn't talk to her cousin anymore, but what I'm just trying to say is that the acceptance is missing. So that is where I feel that apart from the awareness of screening and everything, mental health is something that we do, or psychological need to look better. It's not a cosmetic need, firstly. It's actually a need of a woman to look proper, and I think it's quite justified. Anybody who's a woman has the right to look nice, with or without cancer or any other disease. So I feel this is a part where a lot of people like you all can make a lot of difference in making women accept and make awareness be more focused.
That's really a wonderful insight, Shilpi. I mean, I'm sure for viewers who will be hearing you really highlighting this aspect today, they would take up certain initiatives where when it comes to breast cancer, they can also be focused on the mental health around breast cancer, and what a woman's journey is when she is diagnosed of breast cancer. So with that, I think we had really amazing discussions with the eminent panel of speakers today. And if I were to summarize what we spoke about today, uh, the approach to women's health and well-being has to be holistic. It cannot be just physical or social. It has to include mental, environmental aspects as well. And there has to be a life course agenda. It cannot just focus on sexual and reproductive health. We need to include women's health at every stage of her life. There has to be a fundamental change in behavior. There has to be we need to empower her, and not it doesn't have to be a top down approach. It has to be a process of empowerment, upliftment, making them aware of their choices, what's available, and how can we make it better. uh, Also, when you empower a woman, you empower the whole family. A woman takes care of the whole family. So if she is aware what's right, what's wrong, she will be able to give her family a better health. So that's where women health and well-being becomes even more important. If the other speakers would like to add a line to what I have said, please feel free to do so.
I would like to add one thing here, Ruhi, that of course it is very important for a woman to have a well-being in terms of a health, mental health, physical health, emotional health. But at the same time, awareness should be done to the men too, irrespective of the fact that their spouse, girlfriend, mother, whoever they are in a relationship with, they should know how to treat and respect women in a more proper and a better manner, and accept the fact that there are few challenges that she faces, and how he can make a life better for himself and her too. So awareness in terms of creating for men is also very important. We should not just forget about them.
Absolutely, completely agree with you, Shilpi. I experienced the same when I was working on malaria health programs in Africa, where all the programs were focused on, educating mothers about the child health, and mothers know about it all. It's the fathers you need to focus on, right?
Right.
So the same comes to, it's the same when it comes to women's health. Educate the men as well.
Can I put in some thoughts?
Please do.
Yeah, I too was diagnosed with PCOS, and I was on enormous hormone pumps for giving birth to one. Okay, I feel it was too much. And then Dr. Radha was talking about the health issues like that. Now the new funda is not food restriction. We say healthy relationship with food. We have to create an healthy relationship with food. And the third point is, let's seek health. Let's not get ill and go to the hospital. Here and there we have well women's clinic and well baby clinic. They all seem to be disappearing. Initially, when the Indian government wrote up the health thing, the Board committee and all that, they were talking about health. Now it is not like that. So I think all of us should join hands and recreate health seeking behavior. Way to go about it. You don't go to the hospital only when you are ill. You should go to the hospital when you are health, to maintain your health, to maintain your fitness. Another thing is, Radha was talking about walking. We say from the age of 12 months, we knew how to walk. Nobody has to teach us how to walk. When you go and do your gym and exercises and all that, you have to learn it. But there's a learned trait. But do it a little faster, do it regularly. Ever since the COVID pandemic, I've been doing that Leslie Sanson walk at home. Just few place you have. And I lost 5 kgs, which I didn't do when I was doing my regular walking. So like that, we have to make all women aware that they need to keep themselves fit. They need to seek health and mental and spiritual peace. Thank you. It's been an amazing panel. I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you, Dr. Asha, for those closing remarks. Yes, Dr. Radha, Dr. Pooja.
Yeah, so I would like to contemplate like that Shilpi, Shilpi's suggestion about health awareness. It's not to train, not only train women, but also men. Like usually we have the saying, it's not enough. I mean, don't teach your girl. I mean, it's not enough if you teach your girl to behave like this or not to behave like that. But it's more important to teach your adolescent boy how to behave, how to treat women. And I am a mother of 2 boys, and I take it my responsibility so that they know how to treat the girls in the society better, like in the right way. So it's not only adolescent training is not only restricted to girls, it should also be for the boys, adolescent boys, and the family should take the responsibility to teach them how to respect and empower women in the society. That's it. Thank you. Really, it was a nice discussion. It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Radha.
Yeah, Ruhi, I just would like to already several very excellent points have been put by eminent panelists. So I would like to just say one last line: love yourself, respect yourself, and take care of yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. That was, very nicely put together in a simple sentence. If every woman, accepts herself the way they are and work towards a better health, right, we could have a healthier nation. I really thank Tech Bharat for giving us this opportunity to bring in our perspective and insights on women health and well-being. And thank you.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, thank you all for joining this session and taking your time out and being a part of this Tech Bharat event. Thank you all for your valuable time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.